let's take a look at these two terrorist attacks that happened yesterday, these two terrible terrorist attacks. We're going to look at some of the details of these attacks and focus on the inconsistencies, the connections to Fort Bragg, the notorious hub for U.S. PSYOPs. And then we're going to ask the big question that everybody should be asking, which is who benefits the most from these attacks? So let's start off with the no-law French Quarter attack. This is the New Orleans French Quarter attack that happened really in the middle of I guess it was technically January 1st. It was kind of New Year's Eve. It was at 3:15 in the morning. So this deadly terrorist attack happened when, and I think right now we're at 14 fatalities, dozens more injured. The incident happened on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter at approximately 3:15. A rented white Ford F-150 Lightning truck driven by 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. Army veteran from Texas, plowed into crowds of New Year's revelers on Bourbon Street. Jabbar maneuvered around a police blockade, drove onto the sidewalk. He struck numerous pedestrians over a 3-block stretch. After crashing the vehicle, he exited and opened fire on the crowd and at responding police officers with an assault rifle and a handgun. I know a lot of you don't like the term assault rifles because, I mean, every weapon could be used for assault or not assaulting, right? But basically, it was an AR-style rifle and a handgun. I'm just giving you guys all of the details at the moment, and then we're going to kind of get into some of the deeper stuff on this. Law enforcement then returned fire at him. They killed him in the ensuing shootout. The attack resulted in at least 14 fatalities with dozens more injured. Among some of the confirmed victims, I do want to give you some of them. You have to assume that on a New Year's Eve party like this at 3:15 in the morning, these are going to be younger people. Tiger Beck was 28 years old, a former All-Ivy Princeton football player. Nikra Cheyenne Dado was an aspiring nurse. We don't have her age, but probably young. Reggie Hunter, 37, a store manager, father of 2. I mean, these were just some of the people that were killed. Absolutely terrible, terrible way to end your life and for these families to start their New Year's. As of January 2nd, 16 people remain hospitalized. The FBI is leading the investigation and has classified the incident as an act of terrorism because they say that an ISIS flag was recovered from Jabbar's truck. Jabbar posted videos online prior to the attack expressing support for ISIS and his intention to carry out the attack. Also, 2 functional improvised explosive devices were found in coolers on Bourbon Street and rendered safe by authorities. Also, additional explosive devices were discovered in the French Quarter. Now, there have been some mixed reports on whether or not multiple individuals have been involved or are involved in this attack. At first, they said yes, there was some surveillance footage that showed 2 men and a woman planting explosive devices, but then they did more investigation and they came out and said, no, actually he acted alone, but now they're actually saying, actually there might be some other people involved. I think we actually have the video clip of them saying there might be other people involved. Let's watch that.
A source within the New Orleans Police Department says officials have identified the suspect who drove the truck. The suspect identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar. Now, Jabbar was carrying a Glock pistol and a .308 rifle that had been reportedly stolen in New Jersey. The .308 rifle was equipped with an optics and/or suppressor. There are at least 4 or 5 other suspects involved. That's a big detail right there, identifying again the suspect as a Shamsuddin Jabbar, but 4 or more individuals also involved. This is becoming a different story, Paul.
Okay, that's interesting that at first they said there might be other people, but then they were like, no, but now there maybe are. And we'll get into the motive of that, or maybe there were more people involved. Probably, actually, but okay, let's talk about now these ISIS videos that they claim he put out there. So apparently he proclaimed his support for ISIS. He claimed that he had joined ISIS before the summer of 2024. He explained that his original plan was to harm his friends and family, but then he changed his mind and he was like, oh, that wouldn't actually be big enough of a message. People would just think that I was a crazed person who got angry over a divorce and wanted to go after my family, which there's a lot of people who do that. So instead, he decided he wanted to go after other people so that people would understand that this was a holy war between believers and disbelievers. And then he also provided his last will and testament. So in the first video, he revealed that he had initially planned to harm his family, but he said, quote, it was a war. You're right, I just said this, a war between believers and disbelievers. He not only expressed support for ISIS, but he also claimed to have joined the group before the summer of 2024. So just a few months ago, really. So 6 months ago or so. And this claim, along with the ISIS flag that they found on his truck, have led authorities to investigate and believe that he is affiliated with ISIS and that this was an ISIS attack. Moreover, on these videos is that, where did I have this in my notes? These videos were just, the videos were posted. There were 5 total videos that were posted on Facebook. But here's the thing. It's not like he was posting these videos weeks or months in advance. He posted them mere hours and minutes in advance of the attack. So the 5 videos on Facebook happened at 1:29 a.m., between 1:29 a.m. and 3:02 a.m. And then the attack happened at 3:15 a.m. So this wasn't like a history of posting videos and proclaiming his support for ISIS and proclaiming that he had joined ISIS. This was just in the mere hours right before the attack. That to me is a little strange. His family reportedly were interviewed. They said that he had joined Islam, that he had converted, and that he had some erratic behavior ever since he had converted to Islam. Only in these last few months. So he converts to Islam, has erratic behavior, then he posts these videos online, suddenly showing support for ISIS, and then does this attack. Let's see here. Now let's talk about, and then there's this flag, and I want you to notice that this flag, by the way, is upside down. So this is the ISIS flag, but it is upside down. And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that inconsistency in a little bit. But let me get on to one of the questions a lot of people have, which is what happened to the road barriers to protect pedestrians from the vehicles? So places like New Orleans, you see this all over, like Austin, Texas, there are road barriers that are put up in order to prevent vehicles from driving on. It's not just to prevent pedestrians from attacks. It's also just to prevent lost vehicles from taking a wrong turn and getting onto a road that is heavily populated by pedestrians. But it's also to protect from drunk drivers who don't realize where they're going and suddenly they're running into a crowd of people. That's what these road barriers are for. And there's a variety of different types of road barriers out there. There are some that are just posts that a car would not be able to drive through. There are some that are actual metal barriers on hydraulics that come up out of the ground, and then they flatten for times when traffic can be there, and then they stick back up when traffic cannot be there. And a lot of people are wondering what the hell happened to these barriers. They should have been there protecting all of these people. And they usually are. But interestingly, they weren't during New Year's Eve. And the reasoning was apparently the Bourbon Street Bollard Assessment and Replacement Project began just in November, so just a month earlier, and was scheduled to be completed in February. So they were under repair, and they just so happened to be under repair from November until February. At the time of the attack, 11 out of 16 of the locations had been replaced. So most of them had actually been completed in that month of November and December. They had done most of them, but there were just a few, 4 of them, that had not been replaced. The original bollard system was installed in December of 2017. It had become unreliable. So the black removable bollards previously installed proved unreliable, were non-operational. Mardi Gras had caused blockages in the old bollards, leading to their failure. So in the absence of functioning bollards, the city had implemented alternative security measures, a white gate barrier. So they were using these white gate barriers. It's like, you could easily drive over that, but for cars so that they know down that part of the road. So they're really as strong as like the bollards or the metal gates on hydraulics that come up that would actually, the car would come to. Of course, the white barrier could actually just be plowed down. But nonetheless, they said that the white gate barriers were being used in areas where the bollard removed. moved, managed by the New Orleans Police Department. A cruiser was parked at the intersection to block vehicles' access to Bourbon Street. So they just had a police cruiser sitting there. But despite these measures, the attacker was able to circumvent the security setup. The suspect drove around the police, blocking the road and onto the sidewalk. That's all he had to get a car. So the police chief said, we indeed did have a plan, but the terrorists defeated it. Right? You just had one police car sitting there to block cars ramming in when normally you would have had a bollard system there. Okay, so I just want to, we'll get to all inconsistencies. Hold on, let's just get to some more of them here. So the truck itself was rented on an app called Turo. People are not familiar with Turo. I've used it a couple of times. What it is, and I've used it to test drive cars. That's the times that I've used it. I've been interested in buying a car. I would go on Turo, I'd rent it, test drive it out. Turo is individuals. It's sort of the Airbnb of cars. So it's an individual with a car that doesn't really drive it much, or maybe it's a second car, they have many cars, or maybe it's somebody who's getting into the business of renting out cars. They can get on this app and list their private vehicle for rent. And then people will come, rent the car, drive it around, and return it back to the owner. It's Airbnb for it's not that well known. Interestingly, both attacks rented their cars on Turo. This truck was rented. Turo picked it up at the truck from the individual in Houston on December 30th and drove to New Orleans on December 31st. So it's not like he truck in New Orleans. He had it in Houston. He drove it from Houston to New Orleans. So he wasn't from New Orleans. And so how would he know that the bollard system was not effective? Also, there was some questions about the Airbnb that Jabber was staying in New Orleans. One of the reports was that the burnt down. The FBI confirmed to News Nation that they were investigating an Airbnb in the St. Roch neighborhood, located about a mile and a half from the attack on Bourbon Street. Airbnb was described as being ablaze or on fire earlier in the morning, but the extent of the fire or damage is not specified. So when they went to the house, it was ablaze. We don't know if it burned down, if it was just part of the house, triggered it. Was it an explosive device in the house that went off that shouldn't have? The attacker set the house on fire in order to like tracks these potential other people who were involved in the attack. Did they burn or try to light it or try to burn it down in order to cover the track? Questions there. But suspiciously, the Airbnb was ablaze when they showed up. Federal law enforcement, they were present at the Airbnb location for several hours and were evacuated from the area at around 8 a.m. They were not allowed to return for at least 8 hours. And investigators are trying to determine if this location was used by the suspect to create or store some of the improvised explosive devices mentioned in the earlier report. So we still don't have a lot of information about the ablaze Airbnb, but that's part of this. Okay. Now let's look at his career background. He was a former Army vet. He served in the military for about a decade, working as both a human resources and an IT specialist. He was enlisted in the Army from March 2007 to 2015, including a deployment of Afghanistan from February 2009 to June 2010. He then transferred to the U.S. Army Reserve until July of 2020, leaving with the rank of Staff. He then went on to work at Ernst & Young, one of the nation's largest professional services firms. He then went on to work for Deloitte. Mostly, he was employed by them, another major professional services firm. As of 2022, he was earning close to $125,000 annually at Deloitte, which is a really good amount of money if you're living in Houston, Texas. He also attempted to start his own real estate business called Blue Meadow Properties, though court records indicate it was failing to produce revenue and was losing money. So They're claiming, the claim is, let's get a picture of this guy up. I don't think we've even seen a picture of him yet. Have we shown a picture of him? This is the attacker. So people are pointing at this, obviously a guy with a name like Jabbar, Jabber, Shamshud Din Jabber. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right. They're saying, where is he from? This guy is an immigrant. This guy shouldn't be here. He was actually born in Texas. I don't know what his family heritage is, where they're originally from, but the guy was American and he served in the US military. So apparently this guy joined ISIS, but he flew the ISIS flag upside down. There is an image of the flag on the pole, and that is upside down. So doesn't that seem a little bit strange to you that a guy that has pledged allegiance to ISIS, don't you think he would know what the ISIS flag looks like and he would put it correctly on the pole? Or is there something else that was going on here? Like perhaps the authorities who originally told us that there was an ISIS flag that was attached to this truck, and then the photographs came out and a lot of us saw what looked like a puffy jacket wrapped on a pole. That's what it looked like. It didn't look like a flag at all. It looked like a puffy jacket, to be honest. And then they released this photograph and they're like, see, here's the ISIS flag. And we're all like, yeah, but wait a minute, it's upside down. So was this staged possibly to make it look like, oh, this was an ISIS attack, we should all be very afraid? Is it possible that that Jabber who did this attack was manufacturing for whatever reason that he was with ISIS? I mean, after all, he only made videos pledging his allegiance to ISIS in the wee moments before the attack. Yes, his family said that he had converted to Islam a while earlier, but that he had not, but just barely had converted to Islam from Christianity. He grew up a Christian, converts, and then puts the flag upside down on a pole and drives it into a crowd and is acting all erratic. Is it possible that he put that on the pole upside down because he really wasn't ISIS and he didn't know that the flag should be upside, that the way the flag should actually fly doesn't recognize the way that it should be attached to the pole? Is it possible that he had some sort of motivation in staging that he was ISIS? We've seen people throughout the Palestinian protests, for example, the pro-Palestine protests, we've seen people dressed up in keffiyehs doing Nazi salutes, or people putting swastikas on places only for it to come out that the person who did it was Jewish, and that they were attempting to sow fear, that they were trying to make things look worse, or they were trying to prove their narrative correct. And in fact, their narrative wasn't, but they were just trying to get people to take them seriously, or kind of make things seem graver than they really were. So is it possible that he was kind of one of those actors where he's not really ISIS, but he wants people to be afraid of ISIS for some reason? What would be his motivation for that? That's a possibility as well. But it is very bizarre that the flag for the ISIS flag that he was pledging allegiance to, was upside down on this pole. Upside down flag flying, by the way, could also express dissent for that entity. So it's a distress signal in some cultures, like here in the United States, the upside down flag, but it's also an act of resistance against the entity. It's also perceived as an act of defiance against that entity. So was he defying against ISIS by flying it upside down? I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions here, but it's strange nonetheless that the ISIS flag was upside down. This guy also just happened to only make videos in the wee hours leading up to the attack, wee moments really leading up to this attack, saying that he was a member of ISIS. Wouldn't you have some other evidence that you were with ISIS prior to that point, rather than just sheer moments before an attack? Also, he was from Houston, but he just so happened to know that the road barriers were under repair in New Orleans. How would you know that? Do you know which roads are under repair in cities hours away from you? Would you know if you were staging an attack, let's say in New York, which roads just happen to not have barriers that were working? That doesn't seem really plausible, quite honestly, that he would know, a guy from Houston, Texas, who rented a car in Houston, Texas, and drove it to New Orleans. How would he know which roads just happen to not have their bollard system fixed at that moment? So we're also supposed to believe that a divorce and some financial troubles because of the divorce caused a middle-aged man not inside of the norm of the profile of who joins ISIS. We're supposed to believe that this middle-aged man making six figures, but going through a divorce, that the divorce was so traumatizing to him that he decided to get radicalized online or somewhere and be radicalized by ISIS. We're supposed to believe this. These are things that just don't really add up. Another thing that's really strange that I also want to point out is that in 2021, he had a real estate license because he was trying to start his real estate business. And the real estate license showed he used an alternate name. He often went by another name. So his actual name was Shamsud Din Jabbar. His alternate names, there were two others listed on that real estate license. One was Sham, so that's Shamsud for short. But another one was Eli. That was another name listed, and that's a little bit strange. Eli is not typically associated with Islam as a name. It's actually more associated with Judaism, or Christians will do Elijah or names like that. So that's a little bit weird that he would choose the name Eli for short. Where does that stem from? We don't know. Just wanted to point that out to you. So these are all of the inconsistencies relating to this attack. Now they're also telling us that more people were involved. And of course, this comes after they're trying to tell us that there's all of these potential Al-Qaeda cells in the United States. We're going to get to that here in a little bit. But let's go now to the Las Vegas. Actually, let's play this video. I want you to hear what this guy sounds like so you could hear this guy is American, not an immigrant from some other country. Watch this.
Good evening. I'm Shamsuddin Jabbar, property manager with Blue Meadow Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career as a real estate agent, where I feel like what really sets me apart from other agents is my ability to be able to, one, be a fierce negotiator. So not only do I brilliantly market your property to make sure it gets sold as quickly as possible or gets leased as quickly as possible, but I'm also going to take every ounce of energy and putting it into negotiating for you and for your property to get the best deal that you can possibly get for it. So once we get to the closing table, all the I's are going to be dotted, all the T's are going to be crossed, everything's going to go off without a hitch. And that is my word that I'm giving to you as your real estate agent. So if that's the type of agent you're looking for, reach out to me. You see my phone number on the page. If not, it's 832-774-9718. Give me a call. And even if you don't want to have me as your agent, call me with any questions you may have. So even if you're a first-time home buyer or you're an experienced real estate investor and you're just looking for somebody to help you with doing some analysis on some properties that you're looking at, either way, give me a call. I'm glad to help anytime, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Well, we won't be talking to him anytime soon because he's dead. All right. Also, let's move on now to the Las Vegas attack, and then we're going to kind of bridge these together. So also on January 1st, this one at 8 a.m. Local time in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas, resulting in actually, no, we know that the explosion itself did not result in the death of the driver, but there were injuries to 7 bystanders, and we know that the driver is dead, apparently from a gunshot wound. The explosion occurred 8 a.m. The Tesla Cybertruck was packed with firework mortars, gasoline canisters, and camp fuel containers. The blast was primarily contained within the vehicle, venting upward and outward without significantly damaging the hotel entrance. Elon Musk credits that to this attacker using a Cybertruck. If he used any other car, it would have kind of blown up. But because Cybertrucks are so, they're supposed to be like bulletproof cars, and he used a Cybertruck, the explosion contained inside of that truck primarily, which the guy who was found dead inside the truck would have known that. So we'll get to that. The driver was identified as Master Sergeant Matthew Allen Leibelsberger, an active duty U.S. Army Green Beret. 19 years, active duty in the military, active duty Green Beret. This is the guy. He had rented the Cybertruck also on the Turo app and drove the Cybertruck from Colorado Springs to Las Vegas. So he was living in Colorado Springs, rented an on Turo app, drove it to Vegas. He was found dead from what they're claiming was a self-inflicted gunshot wound inside the vehicle. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is involved in this. They're saying it was an act of terrorism. And the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, confirmed that the Cybertruck, it exploded because of the items in the truck, had nothing to do with the vehicle itself. The Cybertruck was rented. And let me see what else I hear on what do I have here? Leibelsberger and Shamsuddin Jabbar both had connections to the same military base, formerly known as Fort Bragg. Now it's Fort Liberty in North Carolina. However, officials have stated there is no definitive link between the Las Vegas explosion and the New Orleans attack. Leibelsberger allegedly also supported Donald Trump. He was a Trump supporter. He also was allegedly a supporter of Elon Musk. He wasn't like rabidly into Trump or Elon Musk, but he was a solid, firm supporter of both of them. So it's strange that he would take a Tesla Cybertruck and blow it up in front of Trump's hotel. He was also a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter. He was even, that right there is a supporting Ukraine t-shirt that he's wearing. You can see also this guy is a white guy, not from the Middle East. He's from the United States, U.S. Army Green Beret. And he was also recruiting for Ukraine. This was somebody putting a posting up saying quick 30-day contract opportunity in Ukraine, $550 per day, lodging and travel provided. And he messaged on there saying, I've got a top 18D recently ETS'd who is looking for just this opportunity, and I sent him your way. So he's sending guys to go fight in Ukraine, and he clearly was a supporter of Ukraine based on that t-shirt. So he was actively supporting Ukraine. Also, what we know is that the truck sat for about 20 seconds outside of Trump International Hotel before it exploded. So let's look at Matthew Leibelsberger's, some of his work history. He's been in the military forever. He's a U.S. Army Green Beret. He had a distinguished military career that included multiple deployments. Here are the details regarding the deployments. Afghanistan. He was deployed twice to Afghanistan during his service. We don't know the specific dates, but they occurred during his time with the Green Berets. He also deployed to various other countries like Ukraine, which is kind of strange, right? Are we supposed to be there? Are we supposed to have Green Berets in Ukraine, guys? Tajikistan? Are we supposed to have people there? Georgia? Were we supposed to have guys in Georgia to fight Russia? Was that something we were doing? And the Congo. Places I think none of us really thought U.S. troops were supposed to be, but apparently this Green Beret was. Those deployments reflect his extensive experience in international operations, particularly where U.S. military involvement was focused on counterterrorism and training allied forces. So that's what he was there doing, I guess, training soldiers to fight Russians and others. Leibelsberger enlisted in the Army in 2006. He joined the Green Berets about a year later as a communications specialist. He spent 18 of his 20-year military career, or 19 of his 18 of his 19 years, I believe, with the Special Forces. He did receive 2 Bronze Stars, including one awarded for valor in combat, along with other commendations such as Combat Infantry Badge and an Army Commendation Medal with Valor. Also, what's interesting about this history that he's got right here is, let's zoom in on that. Let's show this full screen. You can see that he was most recently a remote and autonomous systems manager. Remote and autonomous systems. Also, down below at the hyperspectral imaging, that company, he was a contractor, and he engineered and he focused on explosive devices, like finding explosives. It was explosive imaging. So he was familiar with explosives. He was familiar with autonomous systems, and he's got a Tesla Cybertruck that has an autonomous driving mechanism to it, and it's loaded with explosives. So this guy should have known both of those systems quite well. Now, the Vegas police found inside the car, they said, first and foremost, we found a military identification, which is what we showed you, the military identification badge. They also said, let's show that badge so people could see that. This was found inside of the car, and the car was allegedly, I mean, the body inside was so charred, they couldn't identify the body, but this is the badge that they were able to recover. They also said that they found his passport, a Desert Eagle 50 caliber semi-automatic pistol, an SLR Model B30 semi-automatic firearm, a number of fireworks, an iPhone, a smartwatch. Several credit cards were also in the name of the subject. He's from Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd, 1987. His body was burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that this individual was inside our vehicle. So they still have not identified him. That is according to the Las Vegas Police Department. Okay, so let's get to some of the inconsistencies of this one. First of all, the driver's body was burnt beyond recognition, but the identification didn't burn up. You could find a passport, like the most fireproof thing on earth, apparently, is a passport and a military ID. So you just happened to find identification that told you who this guy was, but everything else in the car was totally charred, including him. And now you have to actually do like teeth. You have to use his teeth in order to figure out who this guy actually is. Also, why would he bring his passport on a drive from Colorado to Nevada? Do people typically travel with their passports, or do they use their driver's license and military ID, for example? So that doesn't seem suspicious at all. Why do we only see on the CCTV footage? We've only been given the truck blowing up, but we don't see any CCTV footage of the truck driving up to the hotel. We also don't even see footage of what would be the supposed self-inflicted gunshot wound. They're claiming that he was found with a gunshot wound, that he shot himself. He clearly must have shot himself mere moments before the explosion. Why don't we see any CCTV footage of any of that? Was it a self-driving Cybertruck? People are asking that question. So if he was found shot inside of the truck, is it possible that he was shot at a different location and the truck drove up to this location and then detonated? And how did it detonate? Is it detonating through a remote? If it's not on a timer and if it's on a remote, somebody else would have had to do that, not the dead guy inside who shot himself in the head, unless I guess you could theorize that he hit the button, shot himself, and maybe the button had like 10 seconds. Like the full self-driving on Teslas, it's not supposed to allow you to be unconscious while you self-drive. It has these cameras in the cabin and detects your eyes to ensure that you're looking at the road, and you also have to be touching the steering wheel. So it looks for certain kinetic movements in order for it to know that you're still attentive, you're still alert. It doesn't really do full self-driving. But here's the thing. Let me show you this. This was from the Daily Mail. Hackers had discovered that there was a way to hack the cars into what they call Elon mode. And that Elon mode allowed full self-automated driving without all of those safety parameters that are currently in the full self-driving. And that you only needed a piece of equipment that was about $700, whatever the pound is to dollars here but 520 pounds, in order to buy this piece of equipment that would hack the vehicle and allow full self-driving. So you could automate it with a dead guy in the car. You could automate that car to drive up to the Trump hotel and have nobody in it, because hackers had figured out how to do this. So that's a bit, something to keep in mind. This guy was in the autonomous sector. He knew autonomous things. So did he know other people who, of course, he knew other people who were also involved in that same sort of research or area of expertise inside of the military? Did he know others? Was he put in the car? Is it really even him? Do we know? We don't know. We don't have any of these answers. Another thing, though, that I want to bring up was that this guy, this is from Cultural Husbandry on X, says, we have a major problem. Matthew Livelsberger, aka Matt Berg, changed his Signal safety number. So Signal's an app, like a communication app. He changed his signal safety number just before the explosion, and then his photo and safety number changed after the explosion. How did a dead guy change? And look, these are the tweets that show the timestamps and showing that he had apparently changed his number and profile after the dead guy, after the guy was dead. He was able to do this. So that's a little bizarre. Doesn't really add up, right? So these are a lot of inconsistencies with these attacks that aren't really, they don't seem really clear cut. Now let's talk about Fort Bragg. Ryan Ruth, let's talk about Ryan Ruth. Because Ryan Ruth was the guy that tried to kill Trump the second time. This was like the ultra pro-Ukrainian guy who was hiding out at Trump golf course, looking to kill Trump. Now, he was heavily connected to Fort Bragg. And now we know also that when it comes to Matt Berger, we'll call him for short, Matt Berger, we don't know how much time he spent at Fort Bragg, but we know that he was a Green Beret and that Green Berets primarily are stationed at Fort Bragg, that is the U.S. Army Special Forces base. But it's also the U.S. Army's hub for PSYOPs. This is for training PSYOPs, implementing PSYOPs, deploying PSYOPs. That is, Fort Bragg has become synonymous with PSYOPs. And it turns out that Ryan Ruth had been there many times before. Now, Ryan Ruth was never a member of the military, but strangely, he had served, he had never served officially in the military, but strangely, he had visited Fort Bragg a whopping 147 times, staying overnight on 29 occasions over the course of 4 years. Fort Bragg, home to the U.S. Army Psychological Operations Unit and Special Forces, and Ryan Ruth, who was not in the military, went 147 times and stayed the night 29 times. So this is not normal. That averages Ryan Ruth showing up to this base 3 times a month over 4 years with occasional overnight stays. I'd say numerous overnight stays over 4 years. If you stay somewhere 29 times, you're practically dating. Might as well get married. Fort Bragg, which is now known as Fort Liberty, they had to change the name because it's so synonymous with PSYOPs and it got a bad rap. And they were like, oh, we better change the name of this base. It has a long and significant connection to PSYOPs in the U.S. Army. It was established in 1952. Their PSYOP wing inside of Fort Bragg was established in 1952. It continues to be the central hub for PSYOP training, development, and deployment, with PSYOP teams being sent worldwide from this location. The long-standing connection has made Fort Bragg synonymous with psychological operations in the U.S. Army, serving as the primary location for PSYOP training, unit headquarters, and operational planning. And Ryan Ruth showed up there 147 times, and we know that Matt Berg was a Green Beret and likely stationed. We don't know for sure if he was ever stationed there, but it is highly probable as a Green Beret, spending 18 years as a Green Beret. He spent plenty of time at Fort Bragg. And we also know that the initial attacker also at least spent his final time before he got a DWI at Fort Bragg. We don't know how much if he spent years there. We don't know how long the first attacker, Jabber, we don't know how long he spent at Fort Bragg, but we do know that he was there. So all 3 of them are connected to Fort Bragg, the headquarters for PSYOP training and deployment. Does that not seem strange to anybody else? Does that not seem strange to you? And all of them were essentially carrying out attacks that would continue the military-industrial complex. This last one, Matt Berg, it is unclear what the heck was going on there. It's even unclear if he was actually the one in the car, in the Cybertruck. We still don't know. But certainly Ryan Ruth, who was advocating for Ukraine, Trump is coming around saying he's going to pull out of Ukraine. Then you've got the supposed ISIS attacker who flew the flag upside down, didn't even know his own flag for his own allegiance. He didn't even know the right way to fly it. And that guy is, so now what does that do? Now we're seeing a lot of people going around saying, ISIS, we have to go and fight them. See, this is why Israel's doing our dirty work for us, don't you know? So now we got to keep supplying Israel. We got to keep helping Israel because they're the ones who are fighting ISIS terrorists when actually Israel was caught helping, aiding, and abetting ISIS terrorists. That's what Israel was caught doing. They were caught. They denied it when they were caught actually helping ISIS fighters and treating them and Al-Qaeda fighters. They denied it, but then the evidence became undeniable, and they weren't allowed to deny it anymore. Oh, we didn't know who we were. We were just humanitarians helping people. We didn't, we were just, because Israelis are now suddenly super humanitarian, and they like to help apparently radical Islamists, and that because out of humanitarian needs, if that's believable to you, considering everything that they've been doing. So people are screaming now, the aftermath of these two attacks. People are kind of overlooking the Vegas attack, and they're just saying, "Oh no, this is somebody who's against Donald Trump and against Elon Musk." What does that attack serve to do? That attack serves a couple of things. All of the attacks serve a couple of things. One, to boost the FBI and their importance here. You've got Kash Patel, who's been nominated to take over the FBI. He says he's going to gut the place. And now suddenly you've got these attacks, and the FBI is relevant, and the FBI, well, you don't want to gut the FBI because they're stopping ISIS and they're stopping attacks on you, Donald Trump. So, I mean, look, this is against you and Elon Musk. You don't want to gut the FBI. No, you wouldn't want to do that, because we're keeping you safe, and we're keeping the American people safe from ISIS. So we see a lot of the FBI, boosting up of the FBI. And also, of course, this is going to harm the American people, causing us to continue living under Patriot Act-like measures that they keep imposing on us, ripping our civil liberties away. You've got, of course, groups of people screaming about Islam because of the attack in New Orleans, saying that this guy who didn't even know how to fly the flag, the ISIS flag, right, that, see, this is the issue here. It's those damn Muslims, the Muslim immigration. It's their fault. It's them. We got to do something. Here's a tweet. This is an Israeli supporter, Ayel Yacobi. He says, this is what he says: the same flag the New Orleans terrorists had can be seen at pro-Palestine rallies around the world. When they chanted globalize the Intifada for more than a year, this is what they mean. So now he's trying to equate Palestine, pro-Palestinian protesters with ISIS, which, by the way, Hamas and ISIS fight each other. They fight each other. But most people don't know that. They just equate all Muslims and all radical Islam to the same groups. They think it's Iran, even though Iran has done a ton to fight ISIS. They think it's Iran, and they think it's Palestine and Hamas, and they're all behind this. And then you've got Bill Ackman, one of the billionaires here in the United States. And he says to this tweet, let's put this one up there. He says, Ayel Yacobi also says, what we witnessed today in New Orleans is the daily occurrence in Israel. When people say that Israel is the first line of defense for the West, this is what they mean. And Bill Ackman wrote, totally true. We share a common enemy, is what Bill Ackman, the billionaire, says. So again, trying to get people to believe that Islam and Muslims, that these are the people that we have to worry about, and Israel is over there doing the dirty job for us, so we should continue to support them. But you see how the attack in New Orleans, that right there is meant to continue sowing hate for Muslims and to get Americans continue to be rallied up in funding wars in the Middle East. So it's directly for, we got to keep wars going in the Middle East. Then you've got the attack in Vegas at Trump Tower, and that is meant to say, look, we got to keep the FBI going. We're keeping you guys safe. And look at all these radicals. They've come to America, or they're here in America. They're amongst us. They're living amongst us. We've got to keep you safe. So don't dismantle the security state. Don't dismantle the military-industrial complex. Don't stop funding Israel. Don't stop funding Ukraine. Don't stop funding all of these people. Keep the military-industrial complex going. Keep the FBI going, and keep the Patriot Act going. That's what these attacks, really, that's the purpose that they serve. And that is the big question that we should all be asking. The biggest question that we should all be asking is, who benefits the most? Who benefits the most from these attacks? Let me show you this clip. This is Sarah Adams. She was a former intelligence analyst and targeter with the CIA. Okay, so you could trust a CIA analyst. And she's sitting on the Sean Ryan show. This has gone viral now since the attack in New Orleans. Now, Sean Ryan is also a former Navy SEAL CIA contractor. So you got two CIA spooks right here, and they're going to try to tell you, they're trying to tell us that there's 1,000 Al-Qaeda sleepers in the U.S., Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which, by the way, they also fight with each other, but sometimes they converge. And Syria just got taken over by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The leader of Syria now was ISIS, and then he became Al-Qaeda, or he was Al-Qaeda, and then he became ISIS. I don't know which order it went in. But now he's in charge of Syria, and we're championing the guy. So clearly the U.S. isn't really against these guys. So why would they attack us if we're for them? They only attack us when we need them to attack us so that we could keep the war morale going, because we need to keep that going, right? So there's 1,000 Al-Qaeda sleeper cells in the U.S. This is what she says. Watch this.
How many people, how many fighters do you think we can expect in each attack?
Well, the 1,000 is all of them. So we're calling it's an Al-Qaeda planned attack, but within those 1,000 terrorists, some of them are ISIS because they want ISIS to be blamed. I think the more of the fighter types are going to be ISIS, because then if they're caught, then they talk, I'm ISIS. I think more of the suicide bombers are going to be Al-Qaeda.
I think these attacks will happen simultaneously throughout the United States, or will they be one day here, next day here, another one over here next week?
So they want them coordinated. I don't know if coordinated means all at the same time, or if coordinated means we do it Monday, we do it Tuesday, we do it Wednesday, we do it Thursday, we do it Friday, just do 5 straight days. So, but they want it coordinated.
What kind of places do you think they're going to target?
So this is what's complicated. So Al-Qaeda's preference, as you can imagine, is symbols of the U.S. or anything that causes economic damage, right? So capital is a great symbol. I feel like bridges or any kind of public transportation always matters because it puts costs against us and it causes fear. But here's where it gets complicated. So remember, the terrorists might have their goal is they're going to attack the metro in DC, right? But remember, some of these terrorists are going to be ISIS. And remember, they can change location. So the ISIS guy might go down the metro and say, there's not many people down here. I'll kill 20, but there's a event going on. I'm going to go up there, right? Because ISIS is a little different. ISIS just wants mass casualty. In my opinion, terrorists in general, just leaving Afghanistan, a lot of them are coming up through the Darien Gap to the border. And there was a big push, right? Get in the U.S. while you can. Now, not all those Al-Qaeda's attackers, right? But they came in with fake Afghan passports. They came in with fake Syrian passports, fake Turkish passports. Those are the kind of the 3 preferences because they're easiest to get. And then, if our Border Patrol agents, a lot of them haven't been overseas, right? If an Egyptian shows up at the border with a Syrian passport, is he going to know that person?
So there you go. Listen to the CIA spooks tell you. The CIA, by the way, who created ISIS and helped fund and create and train ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they're going to tell us now we got a problem here in the United States and we got to keep working hard. And you need the CIA and you need the FBI and you need the military-industrial complex and we need to keep funding Israel and we need to keep funding Ukraine and we need to be spying on you Americans because look at you. Some of you are terrorists sleeping amongst us. And so we have to be doing all of these things, including ripping away your civil liberties. And all of this is necessary to keep you safe. That is ultimately what these attacks are doing. Now, is it possible that these attacks are legitimate, that there is some crazed ISIS running around? Even though ISIS has been heavily dismantled, they don't really have much power. They do some terrorist attacks here and there. These are awful, but this is used to sow fear into the public to get the public to agree to getting rid of their civil liberties. And a lot of things here are just not quite adding up. And a lot of things are looking really suspicious. And quite honestly, if we're going to look at a theme amongst all of these, it's clearly Fort Bragg and the military. So maybe we should be shutting down some military bases. Maybe that's the actual answer rather than, we got to ramp up the military industrial complex. Maybe we need to be ramping it down because clearly something's rotten inside of it, causing people to be radicalized. So maybe we should be looking at our own military rather than, we got to be fighting those Muslims in the Middle East. Nah, maybe we ought to be taking a look at our military industrial complex and all of the stuff that you guys do behind the scenes that we're not really totally privy to.